your spiritual practice. Yeah.
Before I took refuge, I tried to meditate for years, and I was getting nowhere. I could see that. I mean, I'm talking about 30 years of trying on my own, and just every couple of years I think this isn't working. And then finally, after about 30 years, I said I really, really have to get a teacher, because all the books would say that you have to have a teacher. And I was like, yes, I really do have to have a teacher. That's the way it has to be. And I was fortunate enough to meet Rinpoche. So that's like, this is it. This is the teacher. Listen to him, do as he says, and that was
Yeah, I've heard something similar to that before. Actually, a lot, because I think people initially, when they approach Buddhism, the thing they have access to most is books, and so they're able to read books and written by teachers that they had. Maybe the teacher has already passed into parinirvana. Maybe the teacher is, hard to meet with and things like that. And I have heard that it can be difficult to try to make a lot of progress without having like a meeting with the teacher. Yeah. Are you? Do you feel that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I compare it like if you were to go into the woods, but you don't have a map, you have nothing, but you're just going to go. You think you're going to climb somewhere, and maybe you try to climb, you see a mountain, and you try to go there, and you go up, and it's a false peak, and then you go around, and you just kind of go around till you're exhausted. And I guess for me, the refuge vow is kind of like a pact, that you meet with the genuine teacher who gives you instructions, and you make a vow to follow that. And it really takes you places far more direct, and you can be open to wherever you are. You can discover the peak that you thought you wanted to see. Everything starts to open up. So I think that was very valuable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think direct is a key word. It's not that you can't explore and learn about the Dharma, but if you want something very direct and swift and effective, it can help to have the guidance of somebody who's experienced. Just like, someone who's experienced with a park can show you around and show you which trails to go on, rather than you not knowing which trails to go on.
And frankly, some places are very dangerous,
Yeah.
And you can do things if you are overtired or you're not prepared. Oh my gosh, I've met so many people in that respect who are like really not prepared, but they're going out and they don't know where they're going, but
Right.
they're just going to go.
Yeah.
And so I think, wow, if you have a good opportunity, this human existence, why not try to get the good directions and have and know, be aware of where you're going and how it can reveal itself.
Definitely. Yes. I mean, if you go with this analogy I'm using about going for a hike up a mountain or in a park you've never been to, and you don't really have a map or a compass, and you're wandering around, and maybe you don't have enough water, and maybe the sun is going down, and maybe you can't get out, and you're trapped in there. Hopefully you'll finally get out, but it could be a rough night, until you get out of there.
spend the night a few nights.
Yeah, until you finally find a way out.
Come out with a few cuts.
Yeah, or bug bites. And that would be very uncomfortable. But I think the stakes are higher when it comes to spiritual practice.
Yes.
Stakes could be higher.
I felt like that was like, with myself, like I had gotten into the woods and I couldn't get back out.
Uh-huh.
And that's what drove me to finally seek guidance.
Uh-huh.
I think that I think just like generally Western culture is very can do.
Right.
Do I want?
Yeah.
And it's, at least for myself, like I was always like that. And so as soon as somebody taught me just like basic sitting meditation, I was like, let's go, and it was really great until like things started to get weird, like things got weirder than I thought would happen. And so, it's like this kind of stuff, exploring the mind, it's a big deal. And so for me, it shouldn't be taken for granted that they don't call people like masters for nothing. And if I don't know what I'm doing, I need a guide.
Yeah.
Yes. And in some ways, if you think about it, with the whole like just go for it DIY thing, that could actually end up worse than not having done it at all.
I did ask myself that last time.
Yeah. I mean, the virtue is
But it led me.
Right. Right.
And so,
Yeah.
but yes, it's probably, if you could ideally tell somebody what to do, it's like get a guide.
Right.
And then do it.
Right.
Rather than go wander around the woods.
Yeah.
Get lost, hurt yourself, and then get a guide.
Get lines.
Get lines. Yeah. Lines.
Right, like the hard path and the easy path.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah.
If you want to do the easy path, just like take refuge with the teacher that you have grown to trust. And
Yeah.
just do the thing.
Yeah.
Do you think people usually are able to find out to do that without having some sort of being lost without a map or a compass? Like, is it possible to just like know that you need that from the beginning, or how can we actually share for people to do that from the beginning, as opposed to struggling for so long and having to hit their head? As I feel most of it, can we give that opportunity to younger people? I don't know, but is it possible to people ever just go like, hey, I know I need a mentor, I know I need a map or compass, because if we're told we need a map at a park, we're not always told that, or I don't know, it's some people are born and thankfully given a compass at birth, but I think a lot of people, it's, I don't know. I wonder if that always has to be a struggle or not. I'm trying to ask a question, but it's not explaining what you think.
That's a very good point. And in fact, if you speak to your Dharma community, the people here, anybody you find in a Dharma center, you ask them, what was it that led you to the Dharma? 9 out of 10 times it's suffering.
Yeah.
Most everybody enters the Dharma because of suffering.
Absolutely.
How
Yeah.
can we minimize that before, like, I don't know, we just put it up on walls and around the street?
And must we? I don't know if we must.
Yeah. We
Sometimes,
have to have that suffering before we're like.
yeah.
So she's asking, do you have to have the same realization that the Buddha had when he saw those three,
that's actually, Thank you
in
for
the
that.
story, do you have to go through that kind of shock of seeing old age, death, sickness and death?
I think maybe what the story of the Buddha is trying to show us is that before witnessing those things, the Buddha had everything he could want and a life of luxury, and people who loved him was lacking nothing. And from that, he didn't seek a spiritual path. And in seeing the suffering of beings, he wanted to find some solution or some alternative to the suffering. So I don't think you will seek an alternative to suffering unless you know suffering at least a little.
So the first noble truth, you have to realize the first noble.
You have to realize the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. Did I mention that? The truth of suffering. Yeah. The truth of suffering. So noticing that you suffer, noticing that people you love suffer. So even if you don't suffer, that people you love suffer. And wanting that not to happen. So the second thing would be, the second noble truth is the cause of suffering. So first you figure out, say for example, you yourself are suffering. Then you're going to want to understand, why are you suffering? So that's the second noble truth, looking into the cause of your suffering. The third being the cessation of suffering. We're not there yet. I think most of us are probably still examining the causes of suffering and trying to remedy those causes of suffering. So as the Buddha says, all the causes of suffering are non-virtue and wanting goodness for yourself only. And all of the causes of happiness are virtue and wanting the happiness of others. And understanding that, seeking that out, and trying to apply that are things that are going to improve improve your life and improve your mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it to say that virtue is something that people should learn is positive before they come to the realization of suffering?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So we have the example of you can, most people turn to refuge when they first experience suffering or they realize that this is coming back. what I'm experiencing now could happen again,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it's going to happen again a lot. But then I think I heard you say that you was also coming to the realization that virtuous actions or virtuous behavior is in itself innately good.
Mm-hmm.
So would it be best to teach that first, or to let people on their own realize that the pain of the nature of living, of being human is suffering?
Well, I think it is important to teach. I think people innately know. I think people innately actually know these things. So that like treating other people well brings goodness and happiness to you and them, and treating other things bad makes them sad. So even two young children, if one steals the toy of the other one starts to cry. They're bawling, they're sad. And that doesn't necessarily make you feel happy, even if you get the toy from them, because your sibling is crying. And it's the environment is worse because someone is sad. So I think we have already a natural understanding of that. That being said, yes, I think it is good if we do teach children about that at a young age. I also think it's probably impossible that someone will never encounter suffering in their life as well.
Being a parent, I mean, you can see and also observe in children that oftentimes they can be happy. It's impossible to keep a child happy all the time.
Yeah.
And then, so it's also good sometimes to help them to understand that sometimes things are not going to be good. Bad things are going to happen. And so,
Yeah. The Buddha explained 3 different types of suffering. The suffering of suffering, like the suffering of pain, getting hurt. The suffering of change, when things change and you don't want them to change. And then the all-pervasive suffering that just is all the time, a feeling of anxiety, dread, discomfort, depression, all the things that you feel that are just ever-present. That's the 3rd ever-present suffering. And that exists. And so since it exists, we should see if we can do something about it. It's kind of like the call to action type thing.
Do something about it in a sense to make peace with it, or do something about it to try to take it away?
Really, sometimes they use the verb eradicate or to uproot. It is wanting to not experience that anymore, because suffering is not enjoyable, and nobody wants it. So how could we not experience it? And then there's a lot of methods to find ways to not experience it. And you mentioned acceptance, and that could be possibly the first step to one method
Okay.
of countering the suffering. That and also like transformation. I'm by no means a master of that. I'm sure there are lots of other masters and textbooks you could read to learn about the ways to transform your kleshas into the wisdoms. But that's one of the ways.
Thank you.
One good analogy that comes to mind is the shoe analogy, where you can either cover the whole world with leather or you can put on some shoes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, working with the mind is like that, for sure. And using the shoe analogy, to the mind analogy, the more that you can refine and beautify your mind, the nicer shoes you're wearing. So you could be very comfy, even if the world is covered in thorns.
oh,
Yeah. which is something everybody can do. Yeah. All right, the last question I have about refuge would be, this is a general question, but we'll see. Why do you think taking the refuge vow is important? Yeah.
So for me, it was about like, you have, not a safety net, that's the wrong term, but when everything else is taken away, you have at least that faith that you can not cling on to, but sort of use it as like a bastion or a source of refuge, literally. Like, worst comes to worst, then you have that. And that's like basic ground for me.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Like I use the term foundation, but something you can rely on. Sure. Thank you.
So that's it.
Why do you think taking the refuge vow is important? Sure.
I think also it's like really humbling too. Like it's like the first step to like wanting to improve the situation and like I could do better maybe. Like I have from where I am, I have like somewhere I want to be going towards, or it's like really vulnerable kind of in a way to seek refuge. And studying the refuge can also point to like an inner refuge too. So it's like it's kind of like a process of becoming whole in a way.
Definitely. So a lot of really good points in what you said. I mean, you can imagine that if you're not willing to take anybody as a helper, anybody as a guide, then you only have yourself to rely upon. You back yourself into a corner if you say you're the best there is. Then there's nobody that could help you. So it's kind of, I'm sure we've seen this situation in life. If somebody establishes themselves as the best or the top, then where else could you go? Then you can't learn from anybody. And then you're stuck. Then you've become stagnant at that point. I'm not sure which master said this, but one of them did, saying that if you look at someone prostrating to the Buddha, it looks like maybe in their bowing, it looks maybe like they're weak, Maybe that's something some people might look at and think is kind of funny, like maybe they don't have, I don't know, confidence, or maybe they're not as good as the Buddha because they're bowing to them. But in fact, in bowing to the Buddha, you are actually empowering yourself to become like the Buddha. So it's a interesting kind of, I guess, game of opposites. Yeah. Yeah.
That is interesting, because I know people who've seen the prostrations and say, never, ever, 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 and they're really turned off by it. And they're also really stuck in just being where they're at, and it's not going to change. Nothing can change their minds. So just seeing that contrast of, I have to do something about this mind. I have to, but I need help.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the people I've known who say, nope, I'm fine. Nope. My mind has been fine all along, and it's always going to be fine, and nobody's going to help me. I'm good. And you look at them and say, I don't know about that, but yeah, okay. You can't change other people's minds.
Sure.
You really can't. And I've also noticed that with practice that the Buddhas want to help, but you have to ask them. Because they're not allowed to change people's minds either. No, none of us should really be messing with other people's minds without their permission.
Sure.
None of us. Because they're so easy to break, so easy to hurt. Anybody who's a teacher can tell one word and that student's gone. One wrong word. Especially now, people's minds are just so traumatized.
I hear what you're saying, and I hear some really important points, such as you need to swallow your pride if you want to be able to take on a higher path, if you want to better yourself, you have to accept where you are and then hopefully know where you want to go. And then in that way, you could maybe really become better. Yeah. They have an analogy of what types of students there are. There are students like a vessel. If you are like a vessel that the teacher has to pour all of his knowledge and good qualities into, there's vessels that are perfect and without any flaws or any cracks. Then there are vessels that have cracks in them. And there are vessels that have poison in them. And there are vessels that are turned upside down. Of those, I think having too much pride is the vessel turned upside down because you can't put anything into it. It's like that. Yeah. Maybe I'm more like a vessel with a crack. Hopefully not with poison. Poison would be like you have, misunderstood views. And if the teacher tells you something, you misunderstand it over and over again. And the crack, of course, is the teacher tells you many things and you retain some of it, but you forget a lot of it. If we could be like the perfect vessel and contain everything the teacher gives us and be just like the teacher. Nice. Thank you all for that.
The poison is just from a view that is stopping them from taking in the information?
No, the poison is a misunderstanding
Misunderstanding all the information.
of what the teacher tells you, yeah.
And with all of these, is there any help for them to change their vessel, or are they kind of given a vessel?
Oh no, you can definitely. So say,
How does someone figure out how to change their vessel? Or like, no, sorry, it doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so for each one, I guess if you're a vessel with the crack, so you're the type of student who doesn't remember much, maybe you could take notes. Maybe you could
We're old. It's hard.
record it, listen to it again, maybe contemplate on it for longer. Do whatever you can to try to be able to keep and retain the information better. I mean, all of it can be fixed through effort.
Okay, effort, is that willpower?
Yeah, willpower.
Willpower.
The last vessel is difficult though, because the vessel of pride, if they're simply, they don't think that the Dharma could help them in any way because they're perfect, then I don't know what you could do to change their mind.
Are there any examples they give for how someone has gone from an upside down vessel to?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is like when I was first beginning taking refuge and starting Nanjo, there is such a thing as like you can kind of act as if, and meaning like doing prostrations, it was I felt that it was not, I did not like just immediately say, oh, this is everything that I've always wanted to do. This feels so natural. Like, yeah, I'm really praying to these like beings, and there's it was not necessarily, I wouldn't describe it as pleasant, but there was also an acknowledgement that I did not know how to solve my problem. And I think that was like so fundamental, and is that I can't. And I've seen a individual that is saying, this is how. And so even though I feel the sting of pride, even though I feel the sting of my ego, even though it's like I feel like there's this crazy cultural baggage, like I didn't know what was going on. But it's like, but I still continued. And years later, it kind of just, at least for me, it started to come. And so if I maybe wasn't like somebody with, my vessel turned upside down completely, I was at least tipped to the side, and so, and nothing was really getting in. It was extremely resistant. But, over years, I can say that I, so maybe I was tipped to the side with cracks in it too. and a little poison. So I think that I've been at least right-sided up. I can attest to it, is that, and now, when I would prostrate in the morning or when I take refuge in the morning, it is something that I draw deep strength from, and that I feel, it's like falling in love can never be forced. And sometimes love doesn't come easy. Love takes time to nourish and to just let unfold by just showing up. And I think that, at least from my experience, is that, I love my practice, and it just comes a lot more natural, but it did not at all. For me, some people it does. And so everybody's different. But it's like kind of like a just saying in like 12, it's like keep coming back. It's like, just keep going. If you're drawn to this, then it's like do the practice and see what happens. I've seen good things.
Thank you so much for that. The most important, the acknowledgement that I did not know. I think for me, it seems to be key within everything that you said. Is the acknowledgement that I did not know, and then it's just like, okay, this feels really weird, but I'm going to do it because what I know is not working. So at least getting to that step maybe. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I have a question about pride.
Sure. Can I respond to that? So many good points in there. Thank you very much. Yeah, really good points. One thing I'm hearing, and I just want to pull it out, is that establishing new habits at first is not easy, and it's also not fun. And in fact, it can be painful. But you have to trust that it will bear fruit. So you need to have faith, because faith is sometimes the only thing you can rely on when you have no experience with something and it's not enjoyable. But you believe that it'll be good for you, and you trust the people who tell you it will be good for you. So you have to, you have to force yourself to do it. And then over time, not only does it get easier, but you start seeing the fruit, and then you start to like it and you start to love it.
So I wanted to ask about pride. So is it possible that sometimes pride should be annihilated, like it's stricken down very hard and very swiftly? Or should that be part of our agency, or should we just be receptive to like what life and messages that they show us? Let life and all the messages sort of wear down our pride, or should we really try to hammer down ourselves?
But when you say pride in what?
Just a general sense that pride that I know best, I know better, but I really don't.
I think pride ideally should be the byproduct of when you are doing something correctly and it has a good result. Then you can take pride in something. Like if you make delicious guacamole and everybody seems to love it, you might take pride in those skills because it seems that everybody really likes it. And you can be confident and say, I can make really good guacamole. And that wouldn't be a lie. And if you won awards, you can say, I've won these awards. I'm winning the county prize for guacamole. It's a fact, If that's the case, then I don't think that would be misplaced pride. But you shouldn't use pride in order to look down on others who maybe aren't as good.
Or if someone's better than you at making guacamole.
Yeah, someone could still be better. So even if you're the best in the county, it doesn't mean you're the best in the state or the best in the world. And even if you are the best guacamole maker in the world, someone's better than you at skiing. So you're not the best at everything, in a nutshell. And even if you are, it's fine to enjoy the things you're good at and to enjoy being able to share them with people. But when you use that ability in order to feel, I guess, arrogant or to look down on others who might not be as good, then your ability to do something actually is kind of, the outcome of that can be harmful. So I think it's the harmful things that you want to avoid. Does that help at all?
It doesn't make sense.
Okay. William, did you want to say or add something? Oh,
I'm
okay.
fine now.
Well, I'm sorry. Should have told you.
Yeah. No. Before, actually, recently I listened to some teaching, YouTube and stuff like that. Actually, it was like revision, and the teacher was actually trying to separate the feeling of refuge and the refuge vow. He's basically saying this: even if you have faith to the Buddha, it's different, a whole different matter than taking refuge vow. So I think taking refuge vow has something to do with lineage. I'm just guessing. That's the difference between the two. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. Taking the refuge vow is kind of formally saying you're going to enter into this path towards Buddhahood because you want Buddhahood.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful if people feel inspired or have faith in the Buddha or like some Buddhist teachings. That's also wonderful.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that maybe they want to enter the Buddha's path. That's not assured, or that's not for sure that they want to do that. So whatever is comfortable for anybody at any given time is what they should do, and they should never do what is not comfortable. Everybody has their own progress and their own spiritual journey, and it doesn't help to push people beyond what they're comfortable with. In fact, it's counterproductive.
Yeah. And also, I remember like years ago, my memory is like really bad. Okay, years ago, I actually heard that Bardor Rinpoche was like giving a teaching, and he was saying something like, if you take the refuge vow and you do good things, it's like, I don't know, 10,000, 100 times better than if you didn't have refuge vow. But the same thing, if you do some bad thing, it's also 10,000 or 100,000 times worse. I don't remember the number. And then if you take the Bodhisattva vows, it's that much better and that much worse. And so there's some kind of mathematics going on. So I guess you will speed up your path if you're doing good things. And if you do a little bad thing, also, it will slow you down. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
I've heard these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that taking vows can fortify and strengthen your actions, good or bad. So that when you choose to do something intentionally and you make a vow in front of the Buddhas that you're going to do that, by virtue of that, it strengthens the commitment. So for example, if you just want to say, stop eating meat for a month, you can do that. Or if you want to do it in this way, if you want to say in front of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for this month, I'm not going to eat meat, and whatever merit is accumulated by that, then I dedicate to the swift awakening of all sentient beings. Then that merit has a place. You've attributed it. You put it towards the awakening of all sentient beings. Doing that is very meritorious. And if you're willing to sacrifice something that you enjoy for that purpose, like you're willing to put effort into it, that's very meritorious. More so than just saying, I don't really want to eat meat this month. It has a different effect. Yeah, no problem. All right. So, check the time. Oh my goodness. We're here till 3, right? Okay. Well, hopefully we can get through this.
No, 2:30.
3:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did 2 to 3:30.
Right.
It's an hour and a half session.
Very good. Good. So turning to the topic of bodhicitta, I took the vow of the Bodhisattva in Bodh Gaya in 2009 with Chokin Yima Rinpoche, actually. I happened to be in Bodh Gaya at the time on a study abroad program. And taking the vow of Bodhisattva has naturally strengthened my commitment to help all beings. And it also helps me to forgive others because I remember that I've committed to guide all beings to Buddhahood. And since that itself is such a major commitment, at the very least, I must forgive others when we have a disagreement. So I could say taking the Bodhisattva vow has had this effect on me. It's interesting how a vow that seems to be something so major and even something somewhat as if it's far away and as if it's disconnected from our daily lives actually will have like a backwards effect on the things that we do day to day. So, for example, I'm afraid of spiders, but I don't kill spiders because, well, I've taken the Upasaka vows and I'm a Buddhist and I believe in cause and effect and I wouldn't kill something because killing actually shortens your life. And maybe you're aware of these things. When you kill things, your life is shortened. When you steal from others, you end up poor. When you lie, nobody believes you. And these types of precise consequences follow every single negative action, by the way. So I don't really, spiders freak me out, but nevertheless, I wouldn't kill them. And also, I said I was going to guide every sentient being to Buddhahood. So how can I kill a sentient being? And I know it does get very complex, especially when people eat meat, drink dairy, eat butter, use leather, or use any type of animal product. It's true, it gets very complicated. Nevertheless, I think what's important is your intention and your attempt to try to harm beings as little as you possibly can. And so those are some ways that I feel like the Bodhisattva vow have affected my daily life and also help to support whatever virtuous actions I could say I do. But I'm wondering about those of you who have taken the Bodhisattva vow. How has taking the Bodhisattva vow helped to support your virtuous actions? And if so, in what ways? Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that once you take a Bodhisattva vow, as far as the Bodhisattvas are concerned, you are a Bodhisattva. And when I read that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I read that. I know I'm a really bad Bodhisattva, terrible, but I'm going to keep practicing. So there's this feeling of you're on the road already, you're it, but it's kind of like you're in a baseball game, you're like on the team, but you're just very weak, and you're looking at all these great players, and you're like, oh man, I gotta muscle up. And yeah, get going, muscle up, because you're on the team. And there's just this feeling, just really subtle, but it's there, of you're one of us. We're with you, we're here for you, but you have to start thinking of yourself in a different way.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of really good points there I just want to respond to. You mentioned once having taken the Bodhisattva vow, you feel like you're on the road. I feel like another way to look at this, and not to get everybody's competitive fires burning, but you've begun a race. You're on the track, and there's a lot of different runners, and some are faster and some are slower, but you've begun it. And everybody knows every race has a start and an end. So at least you know kind of where you're headed. And the way I think about it sometimes is like, those, and actually this also applies to refuge. So those who have taken refuge have kind of started this race. And it may take a long time, it may take a shorter time, but you're headed in a particular direction. And there are people who are there running on the track with you. Everyone's on their way. However, people who haven't taken refuge are not in the race. They're not in that race with you. They're maybe doing something else, or maybe they're on another track or whatever. But so that's one way to think of it. And I also like your analogy of being on the team, because it's like, maybe for a long time, we could just be bench warmers. But we're there to just like bolster the numbers. Or like they let us on the team because like we want to be there, but like we're not really good.
Yeah, and then one points at you and says, okay, come on, you're doing this, come on.
Definitely.
You know what that's like.
Yeah. The camaraderie feeling, the feeling of having kind of either subscribed or committed yourself to this, so that you're on your way, you're headed towards it. So when they say batter up and it's finally your time, you have to do it because you've been on the team, right? So if you're a team player, you have to do it. So if we think about it that way, like His Holiness the Karmapa and Siddha Rinpoche and Bardor Rinpoche, they're like some of our star players, right?
Yeah.
Star players for like the human race. And we're like here, but like we can't like catch a ball. We're like trying. Yeah. And thinking of yourself as on the team. You know, when you're a new member on the team, you might not be as good as the best player, but you're on the team. And so like, and you see how the other members play and you want to be like them and you start to train like them and you know, fake it till you make it, right? Eventually you'll get better.
Yeah, and making mistakes is part of the whole situation.
Yeah. And they're really forgiving team members.
Well, did you ever read that thing? I read something that, you know, even bodhisattvas fight.
Oh yeah.
Did you read that? And it's
I
the
know
worst
it.
thing, it's the worst when the bodhisattvas start fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting to read that.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. I guess it does happen sometimes. Hopefully we won't do it. Yeah. I mean, even like, you know, the championship team, they all work together to win, but sometimes they fight. The team members might fight. It's not good for the teamwork.
And one other nice thing, analogy is that even though we're in a race together, there are certain bodhisattvas who are like, don't worry, I'm coming in last. And if you're coming in last, I'll be right next to you.
Yeah.
So there's no feeling of, you know, everybody has to be the fastest. Some of us are slow.
Yeah. It's like a race where the winner is anyone who reaches the end. It's not really about first place, second place. It's just that you're just trying to get there. And you're right that the best runners will run back and help the other ones along if we fall or stumble or need someone to put our arm on and drag us for a little while.
And there's always a way to purify. It's constant, which is really actually wonderful. There's so many purification practices of, okay, you messed up, don't worry about it, here's how you fix it.
Definitely true. Yeah, like Lama was telling us, purification actually is something that as students get better and better and more aware of recognizing their non-virtue, they're constantly having to purify. We should all be purifying all the time, but probably, I don't know, me, I don't. So it means I'm accumulating more negativity than I'm accumulating virtue. I'm at a net loss. So I need to purify it more and then engage in more virtue. For what? For Buddhahood. If that is my intention, then that's what I have to do. If it's not your intention, then you don't have to do it. So it's kind of but I think we're all kind of in this race. So purification and merit are the things that will help us get there. Yeah. Maybe I'll read that question one more time. Has taking the Bodhisattva vow helped to support your virtuous actions? And if so, in what ways? Okay. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Technical question. What does purification mean?
Purification, it's to purify the non-virtue. This can be done through confession, through honest regret, through accumulating merit or doing virtuous things, especially reciting purification practices that have been made to help purify non-virtue. Those are the initial things. That's my first response to that. And then also engaging in virtue can help offset non-virtue.
Where is the purification? Maybe just to
Where does it take place?
Where is it? Yes. Is it? I would think that it's in the mind, is it not?
Yeah, I would say it's in the mind. Let's not ask where is the mind.
I was just, I mean, you cut me off now.
Okay. Yeah. The purification is in your mind, and I would say in your belief. And I think as hard as we try, I don't really think we can lie to ourselves. So you have to believe that you are, for whatever negativity you did, that you are really sorry for it, that you really won't do it again, and that you are going to visualize yourself being purified of it. And those are things that can help to reduce the damage of it.
So the source of what is wrong or what is negative can be outside of us too, right?
It can have apparent negative effects, but I would say the most significant part of it is in your mind. Every time you do something bad, you're habituating yourself to do something bad. The negativity resides in your mind. And you don't want to cultivate that.
So for example, if I'm in the middle of a war and I see people suffering, I can do two things. I can help people who are suffering, or I could go kill the people who I think are making the people suffer, right? So the negative, what's going outside of me is, in that example, external. But my actions or how I perceive it is something that could be a source of purification or could be a source of positive karma, right? So instead of me going and, because in war people do crazy things, right? That's what I've read. People can then try to perpetuate war by killing more people because they perceive this as bad, or they feel it being wrong. Or people could then try to reverse the effects of war by trying to help people who are suffering from the war. So the source is it not that something outside of us is potentially the cause of that, say, negative karma? That's what needs to be addressed with purification.
Purification is useful after you have engaged in a non-virtue and you're trying to kind of mend that. But you're saying like what to do about adverse external factors?
Yes, so is not that when we are trying to purify something inside of us, it's really how it's our perception, right? Rather than something that's external to us.
I think so, but also something external you might perceive. So for example, if you stole someone's purse and you're sorry about that, you stole the purse and you're sorry about that. So it both is something real.
Or you could give it back.
Yes, you could give it back, for sure, unless you can't find her or something. Yeah. Sorry.
I guess what I was I remember on your website or on the website of the monastery, it says that with Bardor Tulku Rinpoche was saying that samsara is emptiness through the mind of someone who is suffering, correct? Or is that how it is?
Yeah, I think so.
On the other side, it's nirvana has kind of like almost complementary.
Yeah, definitely. Samsara is the suffering of someone who has misunderstandings and has misperceptions.
So is that what needs to be purified? Is the misunderstanding and misperceptions?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to see if I can.
No problem.
And also help myself.
Of course. Yeah.
So I know with Bodhisattva, the 100-syllable mantra, that the confession is a part of that. So would a good confession also be that, like, sometimes I can't think of stuff that I did that it's bad, but I know part of it may be just one can't recognize that. Is that in itself a confession? Like understanding the ignorance that you have and hoping that it'll clear up so that you can fully confess.
Yes. And I might add, if you can't think of anything, I guess, recently that you're particularly seeking to confess, any misdeed, you can confess also general, ongoing, non-virtuous feelings that you might engage in, such as attachment to the notion of a self, such as jealousy, such as desire, such as attachment, such as hatred, anger, competitiveness, selfishness, things like that. You can also confess and ask to be purified. There's no guarantee that it'll be purified immediately, but hopefully your recognition that it's not a good thing will help you to pay more attention to it and to more deliberately try to reduce it. Did you want to add something to this? Okay. All right. Okay.
To the question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I thought you wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
what was the question? It's how did the Bodhisattva?
Has taking the Bodhisattva vow helped to support your virtuous actions? And if so, in what ways?
I feel like the Bodhisattva vow is so vast that like almost anything can be like added to the momentum of the Bodhisattva vow. Like I remember doing a lot of work in here, like landscaping. I'd be like, man, picking up these rocks lead to my eventually attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So like picking up the rocks can become like this, like instead of just like a mundane thing, it's like part of the path. So it feels like it's really easy to include like mundane aspects into the spiritual path with the Bodhisattva vow.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's like these words come to mind, like an opportunity or an occasion to be able to add more things and more activities towards it. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And then you can make a lot of even mundane things virtuous.
Yeah.
By doing it intentionally in that way. So really, as you can see, we keep bringing it up, but intention makes a big difference. So why you're doing something in order for what? And if you set this intention, it can have that effect for a particular thing. So in order to set intention, like you have to have awareness of what you're doing, what you're trying to do. How can you try to make everything conducive towards what you're trying to accomplish? The Vajrayana is very rich in skillful means. So what can we do and how can we use it to help us attain Buddhahood? Tons and tons of means to do that. It's very rich in that. So that's one great quality of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I think like in general, at least for me, vows, the power of vows is underappreciated, and that that's one of the skillful means that the Dharma uses, is vows. And it's kind of like, it's like a, because I think, when I think of like our nations or the world's obsession with like something like Lord of the Rings or
Star Wars
or what was it, Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
It's like there's this there's like this undercurrent of honor and of like swearing, you know, like, and when you swear, you mean it. And you watch these people follow through with these oaths to like the ends of the earth and like vow that they will never stop, because once they say it, it's done. Like the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, like they all made a vow, a pact. And there's something like that is absolutely captivating about that, because I think, at least for me, I like recognize something like a very deep, deep power in that. And so the Vajrayana just like takes that and freaking just like says, yeah, of course. They like say, of course, so we're going to use it everywhere. And like, and you're talking about the two most fundamental ones. And so like with the Bodhi, I just remember when I took the Bodhisattva vow, it was like, it just stands out for me. And so, but I can't say that like, I can't point to a specific instances that I know are completely different than what it was before, but I know that I made that vow. I know that I was there and know somebody received it. And so it's like, I can't like undo that. And so there was a time, there was a place, I was there. I think you didn't know you were there. But I mean, and it was the same with the refuge vow. It's like I can't unknow that. And so these ceremonies, these rituals, these vows, are extremely important to like delineate and mark.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I act differently now.
Mhm.
You know, and so yeah.
It's an imprint.
Imprint, yeah. Very important.
It's an imprint.
Yeah.
An imprint on your consciousness. And in a world where everything is changing and your body is changing and your lives are changing, the only place you could hope to try to make something last, I think, is on your mind.
Mhm.
So a strong imprint is maybe your best bet to try to make someone really commit to something.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is called, also, the word for imprint is bakcha in Tibetan.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like to press something into something. And they can be good or bad.
Oh,
They can be good or bad, of course.
oh,
Yeah, imprints, the things that impress upon our mind and our consciousness could be good or bad. And these are some of the strongest good ones that we have. Also, as you know, as a practitioner travels the path, the bakchaks are also something that need to be purified. Yeah. So, if you're thinking, lead all sentient beings to enlightenment, that sounds like a very big job. You have a point. However, the most important thing is that you try the best you can. Although Buddha Shakyamuni taught the Dharma and passed into parinirvana, notice that we're still here. That means that even he wasn't able to enlighten all of us during his lifetime. But his teachings remain. And some of that is what I'm passing on, and that's what also we preserve here and teach here and in all Dharma centers. So actually, Buddha Shakyamuni remains in his teachings and will remain for a long time more. Not forever, but for a long time. Our precious teachers still rely on the Buddhist teachings for their own practice and in order to help guide beings to Buddhahood. In fact, on this very earth, there are destined to be 1,004 Buddhas, of which Buddha Shakyamuni was the fourth. So he was the fourth. So we've got 1,000 more left. And the Buddhas are committed to, and their activity is enlightening beings. And there's lots of records of all of the sentient beings the Buddha was able to enlighten, and all of the beings that his teachings will continue to enlighten. And he was the fourth. So we have 1,000 more on this earth. So how many more beings need to be enlightened? It seems almost endless. Hopefully by that time, we'll be in a much better place. So the fourth was Buddha Shakyamuni, and the fifth will be Buddha Maitreya, currently His Eminence Siddha Rinpoche, residing in Sherabling in India. So that is destined to be the fifth Buddha on this earth. So as you can see, there's a lot of work to be done, even for Buddhas. But it's what we're aspiring to do. And the aspiring is what will get you there. There's that. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing about some of your experiences. I think there was a lot to be learned from each of us. So, turning back to the handout packet and some of our materials, we had gone through the ritual for the Bodhisattva vow, arranged according to the tradition of Raktrul Rinpoche. That was the vow itself. And then the Bodhichitta Prayer the wish that precious bodhicitta be aroused in those who have not yet given rise to it, and that for those where it has arisen, that it will never decrease, but will only flourish more and more. So that's the prayer that bodhicitta continues to flourish. And then we took a look at the prayer that accompanies the Barway Dorje Ngundro, the going for refuge and taking the Bodhisattva vow, which is done along with prostrating. So for those of you who've done it, you know you're like kind of like mumbling and prostrating and mumbling and prostrating for a long time. With that intention and prostrating, you're imagining the field of refuge. That means the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas before you. And now here's a good question. And you're taking refuge and arousing bodhicitta in front of them and making these commitments in front of them 100,000 times. Now, here's an open question for everybody. Why do you think we have to do it 100,000 times?
It takes a lot to kill pride.
Okay, for sure. Definitely. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to purify, but also maybe in those 100,000, if you do one good one,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm. Really good points. Yeah, that in many there might be one good one, meaning that we're often distracted, and in distraction, we do things and we don't really mean it. So you have to do it over and over and over again, like lacquering wood or something, in order to make something really smooth, in order to take out all the bumps. The repetition is what helps us do that, and it helps to solidify it in our minds. And then also, you end up memorizing the prayers, maybe in English or maybe in Tibetan, just by virtue of having repeated it so many times that it's very easy to call to mind. And you might even end up saying it and not really thinking about it. But if you wanted to, you could reflect on it slowly. And so it's kind of like forcing its way into storage in your brain so you don't forget it. Because we are forgetful. And that's the major problem. One of the major problems is forgetfulness and also laziness. So I think also doing prostration so many times helps to combat our habituation to laziness, and also will help us be less forgetful because we'll have repeated it so many times. Yeah. Another set of prayers I added in the handout were borrowed from the Kagyu Monlam book. And maybe some of you have seen it. It's a really thick book of prayers that they recite during the Kagyu prayer gatherings. And I thought we could take a look at this one also because it has the refuge. Notice that it says refuge and bodhicitta together. Oh, so we're on page 9. Also, if you have a smartphone, the PDF is available on the website's link. Nice. Yeah, page 9. Would anybody like to read the first refuge prayer? Sure.
All my mothers, all beings throughout space, especially the enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and all those who obstruct my liberation and omniscience, must have happiness, be freed from suffering, and quickly attain precious, unsurpassable, complete, and perfect awakening.
Thank you. So here we have again, you could say, the notion and commitment to enlightening all beings throughout space. And interestingly, this point of mothers is supposed to generate a feeling of great love. Actually, many Tibetan teachers have found that this becomes a point of some contention in the West, where lots of people have challenges with their mothers. So hopefully you're not one of those. But if mother doesn't work for you, you can replace mother with any family member you like. So like all my brothers or all my cousins, all my grandmas, whatever it might be, if mothers doesn't work for you. So they thought it would work, but who knows? So all my mothers, who are all the beings throughout space, especially the enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and all those who obstruct my liberation and omniscience. So there's a particular emphasis on, you could say, antagonists and the wish to help them.
So Lama, it's possible, what they're saying here is that your enemy could have been your mother.
That your enemy has been your mother.
That's been your mother.
Yes. That's a good point.
Not to say that, the mother that you know, but we're saying that at some point in time in the Greece, vast expanse of time, all beings were once your mother.
Yes, they have, if you want to think of it as a play, they've played the role of your mother before, and you've played the role of their child. And you touch upon something which I can't help but point out, and they've also been your enemy. So they have been everything and anything to you. As some teachers will explain, we don't have a good understanding of this, but the amount of births we've taken is innumerable. And we've all been switching roles. Good, bad, brother, sister, mother, father, friend, enemy, spouse, friend, whatever it might be. There are roles that are constantly recycling and changing and swapping. Male, female, whatever it might be. So the truth is, therefore, if you know that, to hold a bias towards the people who are your friends and your parents and your family in this life is short-sighted, because the big picture is that everybody has been everybody's everything. And it's only in this life that they are these particular roles. And there's no guarantee that they'll be those same roles in the next life. In fact, there's a lot of funny stories that teachers have given, especially teachers who have omniscience and are able to see the past and the future lives of any given being. And they've seen a family, for example, like something like this, like they've seen a family and they're eating a meal together, and the dog is barking and trying to get the meal, and the father kicks the dog out, and then they go ahead and they eat their beef. And the master watching is laughing because he knows in the last life, the dog was the mother and the beef was what is now the son, and it's just that all the roles were different. But the people don't know that. Because you only know as much as you know in this life, but you don't remember your past, and you don't know really where you're going. So therefore, that's why it's important to give up such strong attachment and aversion. So attachment to the people who are currently good to you, and dislike for people who are currently bad to you, because you don't know, because those things are so temporary, they're fleeting. So it doesn't make sense based upon that, just say, because they did that for like 50, 60 years, but 50, 60 years prior and 50, 60 years after, it might be very different with those particular, you could say, consciousnesses, how they manifest and how they treat you. Yeah. So therefore, there's a special emphasis on enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and all those who obstruct my liberation and omniscience, because it's very likely that we'll discriminate against them. So we have biases. So odds are we're going to say, oh, those who are our enemies are those who I don't care for.
So our actions too within affect the future, could affect our role with them in the future, right?
Yes.
Yes. I was thinking I'm going to call my mother and thank her for eating me for dinner.
We'll see how she responds to that.
I don't think she'd be very happy with it. I'll explain to her. where I came up with that one.
Sounds good. Sounds like an interesting conversation. Yeah. All of them must have happiness and be free from suffering. So even those who harm me right now must have happiness and must be free from suffering. In other words, I mustn't be biased about who I want to help just because of how things look right now. And they must quickly attain precious, unsurpassable, complete, and perfect awakening. So that's the refuge vow in the Kagyu Monlam book, and it says 3 times, so we would recite that 3 times. Would somebody please read the Bodhisattva vow that follows it? Sure.
For that purpose?
Mm-hmm.
For that purpose, until Buddhahood, I will employ my body, speech, and mind in virtue. Until death, I will employ my body, speech, and mind in virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will employ my body, speech, and mind in virtue.
Excellent. Anyone notice some repetition?
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas about why there would be such repetition?
Doesn't 3 have like a some, like I know that there's so many patterns of 3 all over, so maybe that's why.
Yeah, it could be. It could be because there's something special about saying it 3 times. Yeah. I'm also thinking it might be because we forget. We'll forget in a day, we'll forget in a week, and we'll definitely forget over the course of our life. And so for that reason, we should repeat it. Yeah.
Well, why does it say, if they say until death, I will employ my body, speech, mind, and virtue, and then it says from today until this time tomorrow? I'm like, first you say until death, and then you're like, well, maybe you don't know when you're going to die. So it could be that, perhaps you could die between today and tomorrow. So you probably should.
Yeah, what I'm seeing here is a shortening of duration. So for that purpose, until Buddhahood, I will employ my body, speech, mind, and virtue. From now until Buddhahood. Who knows how long for you guys? Probably for me, extremely long amount of time. Then, just for this life, that until death, at least, I can commit that I'll try to commit that I will employ my body, speech, mind, and virtue. At least the consciousness I have now will be aware of what I have agreed to do until I die. And at the very least, from today until this time tomorrow, I will employ my body, speech, and mind in virtue. And hopefully we could do it day by day, at the very least, to keep it present in the mind. Because distraction, not keeping things present in the mind, we easily forget the things that we committed to do. And so that's why refreshing the vows, refreshing the commitment, remembering is so important.
And we don't know when we're going to die.
Exactly. We don't. And for that reason, you really shouldn't put things off if you don't have to. And we often say we'll do it tomorrow without knowing if we'll be alive tomorrow. As many people pass away in their sleep. Yes. Very precious human life. Yeah. I think this might be a natural place to pause for today. After this, it'll be moving into the next part of this prayer. Any questions? Okay. All right. Let's close with the closing prayers. Page 7. Is it 7 for you guys? Sonandi tamche zekbani topne nyepe ranam panchene Geka nachi balak trupai sipe sole droa shu Gewadi Gewokun Sonam Yishe Tsozote Sonam Yishe Lechungwe Dampa Kunyi Kohashu Jiangchu Senne Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyurchi Gepa Nyamba Me Padam Gomne Gomdu Pewa Shu Semchen Damche Dedan Den Gyurchi Nendo Damche Takdu Dongpa Sho Jiangchu Semba Kanda Sarshupa Deda Gungi Monlan Drupa Shu Sanchen Rike Tuten Dampe Garge Kundu Shel Dudu Lingbai Sake Mejun Trebu Sana Chu Sishi Chopa Kyape Rashi Shu. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a nice evening. I'll see you tomorrow, maybe.